welcome to Developmental Disorders, Parent Education, Treatment, and Advocacy. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate you coming to this session. My name is Monica Peak. I am a recent graduate with my master's in clinical mental health counseling as of August. Yay! I just recently got my NBCC certification and I'm waiting for my ALCA approval. I also just recently applied, like last week, for the EDS program in clinical mental health counseling at AUM. I own Gulf Coast Family Services in Spanish Fort, Alabama, where I am a family mediator, and soon we'll be adding counseling to that practice, where I plan to specialize in ADHD counseling, as well as divorce, co-parenting, blended families, and parenting counseling. So today in this presentation, I am also coming to you pretty heavily from the perspective of a mother of children with neurodevelopmental disorders, and how we can help parents like me help their exceptional children. As you see there, I am also a card-carrying ADHD brain. So there's that. So I understand it from a parent's perspective, and I also understand it from the ADHD brain. And I am passionate about hospitality, and what that means to me is being welcoming and accepting and providing a safe space for individuals to be themselves, and that includes children and adolescents. I feel like it was my experience when I was a child and a teenager, and I also can see how now as an adult, how we as adults tend to kind of forget that children and adolescents are little people. You know, they are little individuals with their own minds and their own perspectives and their own ways of thinking, and they are not little adults, but they are little human beings, and so we can learn a lot from children and adolescents. We can learn a lot from having empathy and wanting to understand things from their perspective, not necessarily always giving them their way, because we are adults, parents, and so we have to do the educating and the training, but still allowing them to know that they're important and they're valuable and their perspectives are matter. I mean, they matter, they count. So let's see. So here are the points that we're going to cover today, and it's kind of the breakdown of how we're going to touch on the topics of parent education, treatment, and advocacy. So much of what I know and what I'm wanting to share is from my personal experience and geared heavily towards ADHD. However, I believe that this applies across a lot of this applies across the board to all neurodevelopmental disorders. As a parent, I became extremely frustrated over the years with trying to get help for my children and feeling like I wasn't getting anywhere. And so my passion in sharing this information with you today is to provide a parent and professional perspective regarding what clients need and what their parents need to help their children succeed. So our first point that we're going to cover is the importance of helping parents understand that parenting and educating a child that is not neurotypical is very different than parenting a child that is neurotypical. Now, this may seem like a no-brainer, okay? But this is my first point and plea for parent education therapy, when working with a minor with a neurodevelopmental disorder. So, some issues that make it necessary is that the mild to moderate end of the spectrum can create a lot of frustration and confusion between parent and child when traditional parenting styles are not working. I don't know, how it is all over the state. I'm in the very, very south of our southern state, and that good old-fashioned southern parenting style can be a real challenge for children who have neurodevelopmental disorders and for parents trying to parent children with neurodevelopmental disorders. And so we'll talk more about this in a moment. And another thing is sometimes parents have unrealistic expectations of their child's abilities, whether that is expecting too much of them or just not understanding the differences and the nuances of the way that their brain works, and that they need to do things differently than the way that other children do. This is a very simple example, but I heard a parent say that listening to an audiobook is not reading. Well, okay. No, it's not reading. It's not. But if the person will actually read a book by listening to it and getting that information and learning and expanding their worldview and growing in knowledge in a way that they would not otherwise if you made them read words written on a paper, then why label it that way and discourage someone from using a technique that could help them learn and grow because it's technically not reading. So just one little simple example. I'll also say that I have worked with children most of my life in various settings, and I was not prepared for the differences in parenting a child who has a neurodevelopmental disorder. I was not diagnosed with ADHD until I was an adult. And when I received the diagnosis, it was kind of frustrating, honestly. But then also, it started to make so many things make sense. Even reflecting back to childhood, it was like, oh, okay, that's why. So because of the experiences that I had, and because I do have a tendency to look at things from a child's perspective, I have so much joy. I get so much joy in spending time with children and seeing the world from their perspective. So that was helpful because I knew I wanted to understand my children. I wanted to understand them as individuals. I wanted to know, I didn't want to, I did do structure and routine, and there was all of this kind of traditional parenting stuff, but I also wanted to know who they were as little people. So that was helpful. However, being told regular that I was not blank enough, or I was too blank with my children, whether that was I was not strict enough, or I was too permissive, or I was not giving enough discipline, or I was too whatever, okay? That was not helpful at all. In fact, it was exhausting, it was guilt-producing, and frustrating. So I needed help in understanding what was going on, and it seemed impossible to find. So in this slide, this is a quote from Attitude magazine. And so my plea here is to please do family therapy, do parent education therapy, when you have minor clients who have neurodevelopmental disorders, have sessions with parents without the client for parent training. That is something that I had asked for repeatedly. I was told, oh, insurance doesn't pay for that, and or it just wasn't done, or like I would get 5 minutes before they saw my child so that I could say, well, these are the things that we're dealing with, and then they would go and talk to my child about it. And it was like, well, okay, but I need to understand how to help my child. I need help as well. And so the idea of the child is the client, and so I can't see you, and so I am new at this. Okay, so honestly, I get that the child is the client, and it honestly doesn't make sense to me how seeing the parents as part of a collaborative treatment plan for helping the child changes the fact that the child is the client. So if anybody wants to speak to that in the chat, and then that's fine, but to me that seems like a team effort. We should be a team in this, and helping the parents help the child. Giving the parents the tools they need to help their child also helps the client. It's not counseling the parents on their marriage while we're supposed to be talking with the child. So perhaps that's where the boundaries come in, is that when the parents come in, the parents are there to talk about strategies and help and education and advocacy and everything for the child. You're not doing couples counseling, you're not doing individual counseling. That's where the line is. So this is my first plea for this type of treatment is, when you're seeing minor clients who have neurodevelopmental disorders, that you're also seeing the parents in some capacity on a regular basis for parent education, advocacy, and training. All right. So here is the next big point, is that parents need to understand the laws that apply to educating a child who has a neurodevelopmental disorder. So family and school are the two areas children and adolescents spend most of their time. So parents need to understand how their child's education at home and at school is affected, and the laws that exist to help. This is the second reason for my plea for parent education therapy or family therapy, or however you wanna title it. It has been my experience that there seems to be a significant miscommunication or misunderstanding of these laws and how they apply. In my case, the schools put emphasis on IEPs to the detriment of acknowledging Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. So when I was asking for help for my children, asking if, they could take a picture of the board so that I knew what their homework was, or if, something like that, I was told that that can't be done because they don't have an IEP. So I was like, okay, well, so then what do we need to do to get them this IEP? Oh, well, they don't qualify. They're not failing, so they don't qualify for an IEP. That they don't qualify for that. But no one ever mentioned 504 accommodations. So and then when I did get into conversations with someone, whether it was a parent or a professional, regarding 504 accommodations, then what I was told was that, there's no point in doing 504 because they're not enforceable. They don't, if they don't have an IEP, they don't have to do the 504 accommodations. Okay, that is not true. Completely not true. So there are two laws. There are two types of accommodations. So here in the slide, this explains the two federal laws that provide for free public special education services. Okay, so IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, is the one where the IEP comes into play. So this is for children who have really specific needs, and sometimes significant changes to the curriculum and presentation of materials have to be done. So this is where an IEP comes into place. So by its nature, IEPs are much more structured because they have to be, because teachers and administrators and everyone that is involved in teaching the child that has an IEP, modifications are being made to the very curriculum and the way it is being taught. So that requires multiple meetings and multiple documentation and reports and all of that. And so there's this whole team of people that are involved in making that happen and reviewing it and staying on top of that. Okay, so yes, so IEPs, yes, are definitely more structured. However, Section 504 of the Federal Rehabilitation Act is just as enforceable and just as important as IDEA and having an IEP. And here's why. Section 504 covers accommodations for physical and mental medical conditions. So this is important for us as counselors to understand, because oftentimes we're the ones who are providing a diagnosis for the ADHD, or working in collaboration with a child's pediatrician regarding their diagnosis. And this is important because these laws are supposed to help make it to where we're leveling the playing field, or making it more level for all individuals to have an opportunity for education, and for them to be their best selves and to accomplish all that they can accomplish as the little human beings that they are. Well, a child who has a physical medical condition might require a wheelchair, and the school has to make accommodations for that child, just like all children have this right to free public education. And needing special education or special services is not supposed to mean that these children don't get that. So when a child has a mental health issue that causes some kind of disruption in the way that they learn, or the way that they think, or that the way that they think does not fit into the box of what is supposed to be happening in the public school, then this is where 504 accommodations come into place. So, in the situation with my children when they were struggling, and I was asking for these accommodations, like taking a picture of the board so I knew what their assignments were. Oh, well, we can't do that because they don't have an IEP. Well, they don't have to have an IEP for that. They can have Section 504 accommodations for those types of things, and those accommodations are just as enforceable. They are just as important as IEPs and IDEA. They are just as important. I'm trying to hold back because I don't want to go real deep into this, but truly, this is a civil rights issue. Okay, it is the Office of Civil Rights within the Federal Department of Education that handles complaints in this area, because this is a civil rights issue. So, and Section 504 is just as much a civil rights issue as IDEA. So we need to understand that so that we can help parents understand that, so that we can help parents advocate for their children and be able to get the help that they need. And this is important because of our next slide here. So this is big, okay? Sorry, I'm trying to catch up. So this is a major point in emphasizing the importance of parent education, empowerment, and advocacy. Because, so this quote comes from an article from Attitude magazine. And you can see there it says, a recent U.S. Supreme Court decision underscored the importance of good record keeping. The court ruled that in a due process hearing, the legal burden of proving that a plan fails to meet a child's needs falls on the parents. Okay, so then it says it's more important than ever to document your child's difficulties, to be assertive about receiving progress reports, and to push for changes to the IEP. And I put in parentheses or 504 accommodations as the need arises. Okay, so here's the thing that I want to also let you know, is that this is just as important. The burden of proof also falls on the parents when you are trying to get accommodations in the first place. Going through the process, honestly, I thought that the way that it worked was if these professionals saw that there was an issue with my child, then they would let me know, and then we would walk through this process. So even as I was seeing issues and I was seeing challenges and I saw that there was a disconnect, and I kept telling, I was like, there's some kind of disconnect, and they were like, no, it's fine, it's just, he's just a boy, they're just hyperactive, it's just this, it's just that. And so I started feeling like, well, I mean, I guess they know what they're talking about. I mean, and so I doubted what I was seeing. And the thing is that this is where parents need to understand that they know their child best. And if they see that there is something going on, then they need to make the documentation. They need to go to the doctors. They need to go. And I mean, I did all of this stuff, but I was still being told, oh, no, they don't qualify for an IEP. And so, that's the only, and I didn't know. And apparently nobody else that I went to knew either. So this is why this is so important. So I'm going to show you. Once I start, I don't know, I had Googled, and honestly, I had researched and everything. And then finally, I stumbled across the information that said that I, as a parent, could apply and send in the documentation that I wanted my child to be evaluated for 504 accommodations. So that began the process of, went to a meeting, and he was awarded 504 accommodations. I went into the meeting with this file folder and some other documentation full of information to get the 504 accommodations. Okay, doctor's notes, counselor notes, this file folder. This is what I took to the first meeting. Okay, after a year of none of the accommodations working, and it's like, okay, there is something else going on, and it is time for him to be evaluated. This is the next step. So then I sent in paperwork again for him for evaluation. Well, so I went into the meeting with a 3-page presentation of documentation that I handed out to each person in the meeting, and then, so that I did not miss a thing and said everything that I needed to say when I went in that meeting, I printed out 4 pages of information and documentation that pointed to the handouts that they were given and titled it Evidence to Support Evaluations for Blank. So my child asked to not be identified, so I'm respecting that. So when I went in and presented all of this information, there was lots of discussion and lots of kind of round and round and round. But because I had this that I could document, gave them this, and I also brought a copy of my speech with me so that I could give them that, the county representative told me, we do not have enough evidence that your child needs to be evaluated based on state requirements. However, based on the information you presented, we will approve the evaluation. And we finally got the evaluation, and the results of those evaluations revealed that there was also several specific learning disorders as well as ADHD, but still did not qualify for an IEP. But that was okay because the evaluation showed where strengths and weaknesses were. And oh goodness, sorry, my chair is causing me to shrink. So the evaluation showed where his strengths and weaknesses were and what accommodations we needed to put in the 504. Okay, so anyway, that's a whole nother thing. The point is that it is up to the parents to advocate for their children. School systems have got budgeting things to deal with. School systems have all of their things and their reasons for whatever they're doing, okay? And I know as a parent, I have been so frustrated and been like, the school is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, okay? And the thing is that we need to help parents understand that even if that is the case, that doesn't mean that you just lay down and say, oh, okay, well, then, I guess my child doesn't get what they need. No, parents need to advocate for their kids, and we need to have the information to be able to help them advocate for their children. The working with the schools is so important to our children's education. It's so important to their development. We want to be able to work with our kids' teachers and counselors and administrators. We want what is best for our kids. And I do believe, that the people that are working with our kids, they do enjoy working with kids. I mean, there's always some, there's some not so great whatever in every field, okay? But overwhelmingly, my feeling is not that, the school system and the teachers and everybody was, out to get my children. That's not how I felt about it. But I definitely believe that if I had known all of this information early on and just not back down, because I think that even within the school system, some of this misinformation that we're discussing, I think it kind of gets passed down in the school system too. Like people just repeating something that's always been said like that. And so, like the old joke about, mom is cooking a ham and she cuts off, both ends and puts it in the pot. And the daughter says, well, why did you do that? Well, that's because that's how grandma did. So go and ask grandma, why did you do it? Well, that's because that's how great grandma did it. So go ask great grandma, and great grandma says, because my pot wasn't big enough to fit the meat in it. So just misinterpretation and thinking, oh, well, this is the way that it's supposed to be done. And it may not necessarily be the way it's supposed to be done. It may just be the way that has been passed down. So we need to be able to understand these things so we can advocate and help our clients and help parents help their kids. All right, so let's see. Okay, so parents need strategies. So parents need education and training in how to help their child with a neurodevelopmental disorder. Okay, so I probably should have put this before the one about the laws, because when we are assisting parents with strategies and ways to help their children, that also helps them know what they need to advocate for their children in the school system. So this probably should have been reversed, but at any rate, here we are. So let's see. So the reason, this is another reason for, pleading for, doing family therapy or parent education therapy or whatever you want to call it, parent training, when you are counseling minors who have neurodevelopmental disorders. We have to, help with the with parents' expectations, whether or not they're too low or too high or whatever. We can help parents with their expectations of their children. We can help parents recognize their triggers and their need for self-care. We get to know the client's struggles and the struggles that the parent sees, and that helps us to provide a more complete treatment plan. Teaching parents how to teach the child coping strategies and skills building is essential, because oftentimes, depending on where they are in their developmental journey, even children who are neurotypical are not necessarily going to understand coping strategies and skills building on their own. The parents are there to help with that guiding and training. So even more so with children who have a neurodevelopmental disorder. And so then we also, like I said, we want to empower parents to advocate for their children in school and finding the resources that are available to assist them even after high school. So this quote is from, again, Attitude Magazine, from an article there that's listed at the bottom. And honestly, this quote comes off a bit harsh, which was not my intention. I do agree with a fix you first approach to therapy, where there's an understanding that the family system affects the child. It's not the child that is the problem. It is a lack of understanding the uniqueness of the way the child's brain functions that is the issue to correct, and that should start with the parents. Just because a child has a neurodevelopmental disorder doesn't mean that therapy is just solely focused on this problem child and, therapy is going to fix that child and then there will be, peace on earth in the family. The family is going to have to make some adjustments and adaptations to help this member of their family thrive. And so that's just part of it, in my opinion, very strongly. Now, I also know it's not always possible to get parents on board for whatever reason. Whether or not it's that the parent is not in a place to be able to, they're not in a headspace to be able to handle that themselves, or if they're just maintaining the position that, okay, this child has this disorder and so, fix them and, then everything will be fine. If we can't, clearly we cannot force parents to come in for this type of therapy. And so if that is the case, what I would encourage is that we be the adult, possibly the only adult in that child's life that understands him or her and advocate where we're able, whatever that can look like, without crossing boundaries. But give that child the gift of understanding them and help them with coping strategies and skills building as much as possible in the hour a week or every other week that you can, but also give encouragement and let them know that they're beautiful and that they're awesome and that they have great gifts, that they have a purpose in the world. Let them know that, because unfortunately a lot of these kids just get the message that they're bad, and they're not bad. Their brains just work differently and they don't necessarily fit in the little box that society likes for children to stay in. All right, so I'll get off that little soapbox. All right, so my final point in making the plea for adding family therapy, parent education, training, or therapy when you are counseling a minor who has a neurodevelopmental disorder is that parents need support and encouragement. Because as parents, even parents of neurotypical children. We all sometimes can be super mindful, like our friend meditating over here, before, you do something stupid. And sometimes as parents, we identify with the beast over here, in responding to our children. And that is with neurotypical children. So parents who have children with neurodevelopmental disorders struggle with this in a lot different ways, often with a lot more intensity. And, we just need to let them know that it's okay, and, and show them grace. We need to show them grace. We need to encourage them to give themselves grace. And, just helping them to understand that they're not going to get it right every single time. When you're doing behavior therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy techniques, and there's this pattern of okay, so this happens and you do this, and whether it's reward or consequence or whatever the routine is that you set up, it's not going to happen 100% every day, all the time. It's not possible. We would be robots, and even even technology is not 100% all the time. So we need to help them know that it's okay to not be perfect at this. And we also, can help them understand that their child is not going to understand that. And so there's probably going to be, acting out when the routine is different. There's probably going to be acting out when, you didn't do something as consistently as you should have. That their brains are not going to process the nuances of that, and it's going to be a challenge. And that goes back to self-care and strategies for the parents. And so that is the last and final reason that I am making my plea for adding parent training, family therapy, or parent education therapy to your treatment plan if you are treating minors who have neurodevelopmental disorders. And so as we wrap up here, I would like to leave you with some words of wisdom from the perspective of a non-neurotypical individual. So I asked one of my children, what do you think counselors should know about how to counsel you and kids like you? And this is the response that I got. Don't make me sit still in a boring office. Let me do most of the talking. Have a conversation, but I'm the client, so let me talk. And give me something to fidget with or something to do while we talk. So take that into consideration as well. When you have these kids that are exceptional brains in your office, and they have probably struggled all day in school, having to sit still and listen to adults talk, and possibly not getting to move very much, and possibly not being able to be very creative, and possibly having to do a whole lot of self-control. They don't want to come in your office and sit in your boring adult office and like be in another classroom. So make it fun. If you don't have a play therapy room, have toys in your office. Have games in your office. Play Uno with them while they talk. Play Go Fish. Do something engaging, sit on the floor with them. Be a kid with them. Connect with them where they are instead of expecting them to come to where we are. So that is all that I have. This is a link to a resource page. So if you write down that link, it's a public link, and it has lots of different links to other resources. It has a link to information on IDEA. It has a link to information on Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. I live in Baldwin County, so it also has the handbook, for Section 504 for Baldwin County. I think I have Mobile's on there as well. There's a link to a special education attorney here in Alabama that has a YouTube channel that he just recently started. And so he is doing a series on special education law that has been really insightful. And that could be helpful to us as counselors and for resources for our clients. And my number one top resource for people who have ADHD is a YouTube channel titled How to ADHD, and that link is on this resource page as well. And so it's actually a YouTube channel that is designed by and for an individual with ADHD. And so they're fun, neat little clips. I think the longest one that I've seen so far might be 8 minutes, but they're usually 3 to 5 minutes. And it's just a really good resource for people who have ADHD.